Teamfight Tactics is one of the most popular games in the world because many people say it's really fun and chill to play, but it also offers an incredibly high skill ceiling for the strategy game genre. But getting into it can feel extremely hard. I personally try to get my friends from all different kinds of backgrounds, MOBAs, chess, card games, FPS, fighting games, and they feel like the new player experience could be really daunting. And with this season's theme, Arcane, there are lots of players who want to experience the universe of the Arcane characters and reenact the battles, live the lore, or maybe break some of the rules by having characters play together when they really shouldn't be. So if you're really excited to jump in the set, but you feel like TFT is really daunting, here are 5 simple steps to get started to understand TFT and get your first games under your belt. Step 1 is to learn how to buy and field your champions. At its core, TFT has only 2 things going on, a buy round and a combat round. The closest analogy I can think of is a tower defense game such as Bloons TDs or Plants vs. Zombies. During the buy round, you'll use your resources and improve your board strength as the game progresses and try to face off against other players' boards where the winner deals damage to the loser. And ultimately, when you run out of HP, you are eliminated, but if you're the last player standing with HP, you win the game. At the very beginning of the game, you will be offered units in the bottom row that is called the shop, which range from 1 to usually 5 gold. The lowest tier units are the cheapest and they are the most weakest, while the most expensive tiers are the strongest, but only really unlock when you level up. Every single level that you have increases the likelihood that you'll see a rarer champion. When you buy a champion, it appears on your bench. Make sure to actually click and drag them onto the battlefield into the right position. If you have played League of Legends or you're a fan of American football, this is somewhat intuitive where some characters are going to be on the offensive line or the front line, and some characters will want to be in the back dealing damage. When you buy a single copy of a champion, that's the weakest version of it. If you collect 3 of the same kind, you will upgrade it from 1 to 2 star. And if you find 3 2-star copies, aka 9 copies, you will get an upgraded 3-star champion. Each tier champion becomes much stronger in their raw combat power as well as the impact of their ability. Generally speaking, the team that has more upgrades and higher star levels will win the fight and the game. Unlike those tower defense games, however, you don't have all day to make your choices, so to buy and put your champions onto the board, you only have 30 seconds per round. So better be quick on the gun. Step 2, perhaps one of the most important lessons in TFT in life, is make money. The 3 main resources you will juggle in TFT will be your health, your money, and your items. And of these 3, the most important thing to focus on at the very beginning is your gold. This is because it pays off the greatest dividends in the endgame due to how gold scales. Just like your average savings account, if you start young, you will naturally have way more financial freedom and flexibility, ultimately allowing you to pursue other interests in life or even retire early. Similarly, in TFT, the quicker you can start saving, the better. Every round, you get natural passive income to spend. But for each 10 gold you save at the end of the round, you earn 1 extra gold, with a cap of saving 50 gold and earning 5 extra gold of interest per round. If you multiply this across an entire stage of 6 rounds, this is up to 30 extra gold per stage. And you combine this with extra ways to get bonus money, such as winning rounds, getting random orb drops at the end of each stage, and you will have way more gold than someone who chooses to spend it recklessly every round without future investment. So for your first 2 games, here's some primary advice. For stage 1 and 2, try to save as much gold as you can to 50 as quickly as you can. But you can also buy champions with leftover gold over each interest threshold. This means if you have 17 gold, you can buy champions until you're down to 10 gold because you're about to make 1 gold either way. If you're at 25 gold, buy down to 20, and so on and so forth until 50 gold. Once you're above 50 gold, you can spend your gold more liberally by using it to level and out-earn everyone else. But I want to warn you, this might feel bad at first because people who spend their gold will win their early rounds and will deal damage to you, and that's going to scare you off because you're going to lose a lot of HP. But let them have their fun for now because late game, we're going to outscale them because if we're going to be higher level than them, we'll have more units on the board and be able to roll for better upgrades in order to find a stronger board. And in TFT, as long as you have 1 health, you're good to go. When you're 40, 50, 60 gold of everyone else, you can spend that gold on either purchasing champions or directly purchasing experience points to level for higher tiered units. And each level allows you to field an additional team size. And if you're fighting 7 vs 5 with higher tiered units and 2-star upgrades, you will win way more fights. This is why money is so important, because it unlocks so much power and potential for your board as the game develops. Step 3, build items. The next step is to understand how to itemize our champion, because that's how the true power unlocks. If you've ever queued up League of Legends, lost your prime years of life to World of Warcraft, or even explored the worlds of RPGs like Legend of Zelda, everyone understands that you want the best equipment possible so you can gain a bunch of stats to multiply your combat strength. This is also true in TFT. Even if you have the most experience and highest tier champions, if you fight with no items, you're going to lose every round, and probably blame bad luck, even though it was your fault. Okay, you probably will do that anyways, even if you have the right items, but it's much more likely to happen. The item system in TFT is quite simple on the surface. Combine 2 components to make a combat item. Throughout the game, you will receive these components through loot orbs, dropped during PvE or the carousel. There are 8 unique components that all make different items when combined. But as you can see, while it's easy to understand, the itemization in TFT can also be pretty complex and even punishing, because you cannot uncombine the items without a special effect later on. Because of the permanence of items and the dozens of choices, it can be pretty overwhelming. So here are just 2 simple concepts to keep in mind as you get started. The first concept is that you're going to want a mix of offense and defensive items. It's generally a really bad idea to make all offensive items and all defensive items. If you combine defensive components like a chain vest and a Negatron cloak, will make a tank item to help your beefy frontline. If you combine offensive components like swords and bows and rods, you will get damage items to amplify your carry's effectiveness. There's also many hybrid items that accomplish a little bit of offense and defense and even some utility, but don't worry about that yet. That's what TFT Academy is for. Just for now, focus on making sure of combining a good mix of offense and defensive items. The second crucial thing to understand is that items multiply off each other. This means it's far better to have 3 items on a single unit as opposed to 1 item spread around to a bunch of different units. If you play League, this is similar to having 1 hyperfed champion, then a team of players with maybe 1 item. So you want to aim for 3 full combat items onto 1 specific unit to help you carry and deal damage, and 3 defensive items on a specific tank to hold your front line. You should have this all done by the end of stage 4, and you'll have your composition ready to go. Items are really simple, but they actually are really hard to master, and it's a learning curve that many people really enjoy about TFT. After you're done learning how to make money, items are going to be that first major area of focus for how do you improve your game. Step 4 is building your trait web. Activating traits is the second crucial way to multiply your team's effectiveness. Each unit will have traits that will naturally want to be teamed up with other units of similar traits. To use an analogy, in Magic the Gathering, everyone knows you can build a deck with just 1 color. But the true fun of deck building is when you can mix in different colors with various splashes for a really sick combo. Similarly, in TFT, you want a good mix of different strategies and traits to amplify the power of your team. Generally speaking, you don't want all offensive traits and you don't want all defensive traits, because that's going to make your team comp one-dimensional. Always think about balance of your team. To get started, think about having 1 defensive trait and 1 offensive trait. And this applies at every phase of the game. In stage 2, you're likely going to have 2 offensive and 2 defensive units. As you level in stage 3 and 4, you might have 3 offensive and 3 defensive. And then when you get to level 8, you're going to look for 4 offensive and 4 defensive. For this specific arcane set, look for defensive traits like Sentinel, Bruiser, or Watcher, and combine it with an offensive trait like Sniper, Sorcerer, or Artillerist. An easy example to use this would be 4 Bruiser and 4 Sniper. Bruiser is a trait that gives your team lots of health, and snipers deal damage the farther they are away from the enemy team. By placing these beefy bruisers in front, they provide space for our snipers to deal maximum damage. And we want to place our snipers in the very farthest row possible away from the enemy team to maximize their bonus damage. We even have a third trait activated, an Enforcer, which gives us additional bonuses. But notice how there are other several inactive traits that are 1 out of 2 or 1 out of 3. We can see by finding a higher tier unit like Caitlyn, we will now have more power in the Enforcers while maintaining an equally strong front line. Congrats, we just improved our damage by using a higher tier unit and leveling up without losing any efficiency. The last but equally important missing piece is to pick augments to enhance our team. In TFT, you'll be offered 3 augments per game. These augments range from temporary to permanent buffs for your team. Augments are what bring life and replayability into TFT because you'll be offered many different choices every single time you queue up a new game. There are literally hundreds of augments in the game, and they all range from simple power-ups to very situational but strong strategies that require you to pivot your entire strategy to execute. And to add on top of that, Riot is always balance patching and also changing around augments multiple times a year to keep the game fresh. That can sound really overwhelming, so here's our primary tip for navigating augments. Play around your first augment as your core strategy. Even if you get something really tempting later on, do not deviate from your first augment. To go back to our previous example, you may be offered something that makes snipers really strong, like Sniper's Nest. This gives us a Zeri as well to build a sniper backline immediately. From here on out, we want to make sure to pick our second and third augment that will have synergy with snipers. Let's avoid something else like sorcerers or arcane retribution that would encourage us to immediately pivot to sorcerers instead. How about we end up picking other combat augments that make our frontline tanks even more durable so that they can stall for our snipers? So let's take something like this. Noble Sacrifice. When one ally dies, the others gain a bunch of resistances and become tankier. Now our frontline is more secured and stalls even longer for our snipers to ramp up their damage. Finding crazy augment combos that destroy a lobby or barely squeezing by because your team is scuffed and you couldn't even replicate it if you tried is the real sauce of TFT and why it's become so popular. And when you multiply augments with your items and the champions and the 8 players in the lobby, there's actually an incredible world of possibility that can happen. I one time asked the lead developer of TFT, Mortdog, how many possibilities there are in the game. He quoted me 1.995 times 10 to the 35th power, and that's underselling it. I don't even know the English word for that many zeros in a number. It feels like infinity to me. And here's a bonus 6th step for you before you go. If you've made it this far, congratulations, you know all the 5 core pillars of TFT and are ready for action. If you're feeling up for it, I would highly recommend your first few games to be in a game mode called Hyper Roll. Hyper Roll is a fun game mode that is ranked, but it's not as intense and serious as solo queue. Games are twice as fast because everyone starts off with only 20 health instead of 100, and you cannot make interest gold and you automatically level. This way, instead of focusing on all the things at once like gold and items and augments, you can just focus on only 1 or 2 things like building the right items and then selecting the right augments. After you get some reps on this, feel free to dive into normals or ranked and see how high you can climb. And there you have it, the 5 steps to how to get into TFT. So to summarize, here are the 5 core points. 1, buy a lot of champions. 2, make a lot of gold. 3, build good balanced items. 4, activate your traits. And 5, play around your augments and make sure they have synergy with each other. If you need any more help in terms of what to play, make sure to check out our stuff over at TFTAcademy.com, where we have an updated tier list every single day so that you can keep up with the meta. There's not much more to say. Cue it up. I'll see you out there on the Convergence.